Black Myth Wukong blew us all away. What started as a trailer everyone thought was too good to be true turned into one of the most unforgettable games of this generation, and now Game Science is back at it again. Out of nowhere, at Gamescom 2025, they dropped a bombshell, Black Myth Zhongque, a brand new chapter, a brand new hero, and from the looks of it, a much darker journey than we've seen before. This is essentially the next installment in the Black Myth series. However, during Gamescom presentation, they also announced that there is more awaiting for us in Wukong as well. So let's dive into what this reveal means, who Zhongque really is, and why this might be Game Science's boldest move yet. So, what is Black Myth Zhongque? And by the way, I apologize if I'm completely butchering the name. Obviously, I don't really speak Chinese, so I am absolutely going to butcher the pronunciations. But with that out of the way, this is going to be another single-player ARPG in the Black Myth franchise, following the same business model as before. And there's actually quite a bit of information that Game Science was able to share over here in the FAQ section of the game's website, which is, by the way, up at the time of making this video. And just like in the case of Wukong, it's going to share the same foundation rooted in ancient Chinese mythology and folklore. However, instead of playing as the destined one, so as the Monkey King, we're now going to play as a completely new protagonist, which also goes by the name of the King of Ghosts. And look, I read a bit about the lore. I don't claim that I even understand it as. Obviously, I would have to actually start reading it from top to bottom. It is hundreds of years old, but luckily some of our Chinese friends actually gave in quite a bit more context about him. So I'm going to link some stories down below, but basically this is one of the most famous exorcists in Chinese folklore, with stories about him going all the way back to Tang Dynasty. So essentially 7th to 8th century China, and according to the legend, he was a brilliant scholar who came out on top in the imperial exams, but his hideous appearance so offended the emperor that he refused to give him the title he had earned. Driven by despair and injustice, he committed suicide by smashing himself against palace gates. Because even gods have a sense of irony. In the afterlife, the underworld judge Yanluo Wang, or King Yama, recognized in him someone of fierce integrity and potential. Rather than condemn him, Yanluo named Zhongque the King of Ghosts, entrusting him with commanding 80 Zero demons and maintaining order among the spirit world. On Chinese New Year's Eve, Zhongque returned to his hometown, still burning bright with gratitude, to arrange a marriage between his sister and his friend Du Ping, a hauntingly touching gesture amid mythic tragedy. Zhongque's image wasn't just a niche folklore figure, he became a staple in Chinese art and ritual. A famous Tang-era emperor, Xuanzong, started having endless nightmares, almost as if he was cursed, whether if it was indeed a curse or just a grave illness. One faithful night, the emperor had a dream during which Zhongque introduced himself, banished a malicious spirit, and had also sworn to get rid of the Empire of Evil. And coincidentally, upon waking up, the emperor had completely recovered from said curse. He then commissioned the famed painter Wu Daozi to depict the Ghost Hunter, a painting that set the archetype for Zhongque's enduring imagery, hence getting popularized as the King of Ghosts. From then on, Zhongque was remembered as the King of Ghosts, a fierce, almost terrifying protector who commands legions of spirits to hunt down demons, monsters, and anything that threatens humanity. Now what's cool is that Zhongque didn't just stay in stories, he became a cultural icon. Paintings of him were hung in homes to ward off evil. During Chinese New Year, his image was put on doors as a protector. He's usually depicted with a big beard, bulging eyes, wearing a red robe and a black scholar's hat, carrying a sword, or even a folding fan. Sometimes you'll see him with a bat, because in Chinese, bat sounds like fortune. And in a lot of traditional artwork, he's even shown stomping on demons with his ghost army following behind. And just reading some of the lore bits over here, it seems to fit this style of gameplay pretty much like a glove. We of course also saw something like this in Black Myth Wukong, as it is. We had all of the enemies, all of the types of monsters that we fought from the mythology, and it fit very well over there. All the 99 challenges felt like something super unique, but also drawing inspiration from such a rich lore. So honestly, I cannot wait to see what they have in store. But there's a big disclaimer over here, and that is that literally this is just a presentation trailer. They don't even have any gameplay to show at this point, because there's literally nothing more than an empty folder at this stage according to their own FAQ. But based on the myth, we can guess what might be coming. He literally controls spirits, so imagine summoning ghost allies in combat, or maybe fusing them into your abilities. That would be so cool. Since he's tied to the courts of hell, we could see entire levels built around the Chinese underworld, haunted landscapes, spirit trials, and creepy folklore monsters. The trailer already showed him riding a giant tiger. That could either be a mount, a boss, or maybe even a summon. Unlike Wukong, who is arrogant and mischievous, Zhongque is tragic. His story is about injustice, pain, and eventually finding purpose in protecting others. That contrast could give the game a very different emotional weight. Apart from this, there is another question comes into mind, like when is this thing coming out? Honestly, not anytime soon. Game Science themselves said it's way too early in development, There's no release year, no roadmap, nothing. If I had to guess, we're looking at a timeline similar to Wukong, so maybe late this decade. However, they do have some information about the platforms Black Myth Zhonghui will launch on, which is basically PC and all the mainstream console platforms. So they don't even mention current-gen consoles by name because it's totally possible this may drop for next-gen consoles. So possibly PlayStation 6, given that there are reports they may launch after 2027 or 28. So it's still quite a few years until then, but maybe not waiting quite as much as we did for Black Myth Wukong. And if you were wondering, why are we getting this announcement this early? It's literally answered within the first question, because it's our tradition to report our progress to players on every August 20th. So expect more news about it, I guess, next year, also on August 20th. But this also brings us to the question about what happened to Black Myth Wukong. Is there still anything planned for it? And the good news is that, yes, there absolutely still is. To all of the friends who love Black Myth Wukong, the westward journey won't end here. And that's basically the only thing they were able to confirm. Now, is that going to be a DLC? Like, for example, the patch that we got at the end of last year was actually quite big in terms of content. It did feature some new armors, new map menus over there, of course. Also new Game Plus challenges that were actually very difficult, and quite a few other items on top. So is it going to be on that scale, or will it be something bigger? Because by this point, I am expecting something much bigger, maybe even something that expands a bit on the story. Now, I did revisit some of the leaks from last year. There were quite a few data mines and possible leaks, but now looking at them, yeah, I'm about 99% convinced all of them were absolutely untrue. Maybe with the exception of the stuff that was actually data mined about the boss versions and whatnot. There were quite a few bosses that didn't make it the final release version of the game, but are either part of the main story, or at the very least, there are some data strings found via data mining. But of course, this still doesn't mean that they may be part of a future expansion. It's maybe something that was just pulled out last minute. Otherwise, I do hope that there is some story continuation. There were quite a few characters in the original lore that seemed very interesting, and I would definitely love to see what direction Black Myth Wukong takes. But as it stands, we kind of have conflicting reports. Even though I do know that we got this from the official Gamescom announcement, but essentially it seems that there's also this translation of a post from the games director over on Weibo, which is basically, I guess, Chinese Twitter. But essentially, it goes along the line of saying that the team was already working on the DLC for about like 6 months after the launch of Black Myth Wukong, but they found themselves not having enough passion as it was before and interest to keep working for Wukong. So at some point, a decision was made to actually start a new title. Hence why they keep talking about challenging themselves, bringing refreshing changes, creating new things while taking a hard look at their past flaws and regrets. So obviously, it's going to be very hard for them to actually match the same level as Black Myth Wukong had. And let's not forget about the fact that Journey to the West and the Monkey King are a much bigger piece of folklore and mythology than Zhonghui. So obviously, it's probably not going to hit the same numbers like the 20 million in the first week or whatnot as Black Myth Wukong did, but I'm still expecting for some pretty big numbers given the fact that the studio now has some pretty good track record. Even with some of the performance issues, I still think that Black Myth Wukong was a freaking good game to play. So yeah, this is pretty much it with the update. Do let me know down below in the comments what you think about it. Are you excited for Black Myth Zhonghui? Do you think it can live up to Wukong's hype, or maybe even surpass it? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button if you're as hyped as I am, and of course subscribe for more updates as we follow this journey. I'm going to link some threads down below, including the one with the translation where you can go ahead and check it out for yourself. To me, it sounds like the DLC is kind of taking a step back right now compared to the actual sequel, which seems that the whole team is now fully engaged on. So yeah, this is pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.